I'm extremely excited to announce a brand new sponsor for the Behind the Shield podcast, and that is Rescue One CBD. For any of you who have listened to this podcast for the last 8 years, you would have heard my own personal journey from using prescription pills after a knee surgery to finding CBD and having incredible success with that. I then saw my son's wheezing diminish, my wife's anxiety, and so many more kind of success stories. The problem is, though, I've also seen the stigma and misunderstanding about this incredibly powerful plant medicine. When it comes to workplace drug testing, it's THC that they are looking for. The concentration is high in marijuana, but there is a small amount in most CBD products. And with John being a veteran firefighter paramedic himself, he was determined to find a product that was pure, that would ensure there was nothing in there that would put someone's career at risk. So he developed a 3-tier system. The third-party testing facility tests to parts per billion, which is the most minute amount I have ever heard of in all the time I've worked with CBD. The results of every batch are posted on their website, so you can literally see the same results that they see from the batch that you are ordering. Secondly, they include workplace drug test kits in the order when you order it. So if you have any fears, you get to do it just to appease it, even though this is a pure and safe product. Thirdly, they've just finished a year-long study with the University of Maryland and Arcadia University, and firefighters from all over the country sent in their urine samples, and not a single person failed a drug test. So you have 3 different tiers of trust with this particular product. Now, they have different flavors for their CBD. For anyone that's had it, that's just the CBD oil. It does not taste good, so they found a way of making it more palatable. They have a sleep remedy that has terpenes in, again, completely safe. That one's called Out of Service. And then topical CBD, obviously, for aches and pains on the outside. Now, on top of all that, Rescue One is offering you, the listener of the Behind the Shield podcast, 15% off your order if you use the code BTS, as in Behind the Shield. And you can find all of their products, you can find all of the testing and understand why this truly is a product that you can trust by going to rescue1cbd.com. And you can listen to my conversation with John on episode 1011 of the Behind the Shield podcast. This episode is sponsored by Team Builder, yet another company that's doing great things for the first responder community. As a strength and conditioning coach myself who also trains tactical athletes, dissemination of wellness information is one of the biggest challenges. Now, Team Builder is the premier strength and conditioning software for tactical athletes, and there are several features that really impress me. Firstly, there is a full exercise library, so you, the personal trainer, does not have to create that within your own department. Secondly, you can send out programming, but also individualize, which I love. So you blanket program for everyone. Now you can tweak based on someone's injury, someone's need to maybe drop some body composition, rather than having to write a program for every single person on their own. Team Builder also allows you to build custom questionnaires to collate health and wellness data. It integrates with wearables. And I think one of the most important things is obviously it tracks. To me, it's imperative that we as a profession start tracking our people from day one and then over the full span of their career, therefore catching potential wellness issues and injuries before they happen. Now, if you want to try Team Builder, they are offering you, the audience of the Behind the Shield podcast, a free 14-day trial to experience all of the features. And if you want to take a deeper dive into Team Builder, listen to episode 1032 with Melissa Mercado, or go to teambuilder.com. And I'll spell that to you because it's not as you'd think, teambuildr.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome back onto the show smoke jumper and innovator Jason Ramos. Now, Jason first came on the show on episode 219, and I highly recommend that you listen to his story, the creation of his book, and so much more on that episode. This time we sat down on the wake of the California fires that not only were deadly, but devastated neighborhoods and people lost everything. So I wanted to get a respected voice from the wildland community to discuss the fires and talk about preventative elements that we can apply and hopefully avoid the next tragedy. So we discuss a host of topics, from some of the incredible technological innovation that's available, some of the ancient methods that they're finding working very well, the issue with the water supply, sheltering in place, climate change, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of over 1,000 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. And as one side note, I was sick as a dog when I did this interview, so you will hear a massive difference in my voice, and I apologize for any sniffing or coughing that I wasn't able to delete. So with that being said, I welcome back onto the show Jason Ramos. Enjoy. Well, Jason, I want to start by saying welcome back to the show. You were my guest on episode 219, and since we're up past 1,000 now, that would suggest that was probably about 6 years ago. So it's been a long time coming that we had this second conversation. So welcome back.
Yeah, it's an honor. It's always good to hear you, see you. It's awesome.
So we're going to jump into several topics. Obviously, the world of wildland firefighting has become front and center since the tragedies in California. Before we do, though, kind of lead me through, we left off where you were about 6 years ago. What have the last 5 or 6 years been like for you as far as career and just kind of personal journey?
Wow, that's crazy, right? I'm still on a roller coaster. Since the book came out, 2015, it's been a ride. It still is. And what's cool, I'm still able to do something, right? I'm not the old firefighter, put him in the barn and shoot him, at least not yet. So I do search and rescue stuff. I'm still consulting on bigger levels. I was honored to consult for the president's PCAS team and the outgoing president. The list just goes on, just keeps stacking, which is a huge honor, right? As my dad taught me. And if you knock on the door and you kick on the door, someone will answer, right? So I stick to that recipe, and it's been crazy. I do a lot of drone stuff now, so I'm on the FAA safety team, everything to do with flying unmanned aircraft, which I did as a hobby. Now I'm doing it, I'm getting paid for it, which is, right, it's hard work, and some of it's volunteer. So I still do a lot of stuff as a volunteer as firefighters, right? We do a lot of stuff that you don't get paid for. That's how it goes. So if you don't like it, hey, go somewhere else. So yeah, a lot of interesting things, and every day is something different. It keeps me moving.
Well, we are straddling presidencies as we have this conversation. What were the good things that you were able to help put in place under the last administration? And then what are you hoping that we can transition to with this one?
Oh, that's the $1 trillion question and answer there. The outgoing, it was a huge honor to be part of it's a wildland report for the president right at that time. It's by the PCAS team for the president. It's all their PhDs and folks very smarter than me, a lot smarter than me. And to see the report was cool, but still not listening to some of the pieces. And what's hard about that, when they do in a report like that, they got to understand that a lot of people they need to speak to, they can't talk to because the government won't let them talk. That's the sad part.
In what way? What's preventing that conversation?
It's so you have the ethics right under the whether it's the Fed firefighters, I'll say it, the Forest Service. I don't work for him anymore. It was an honor to work for him, but the Forest Service had a lot of red tape. We're not talking red tape, we're talking red barricades of things you can say, what you can't say. And I got very proficient at what I could say, right? They tried to determine my position for writing a book. I was able to win that and not get terminated for writing a book because I didn't do anything wrong. So there's firefighters out there just act like if you were an employee, right? You were out there speaking and you hit national news. You might not have a job tomorrow if you went viral, because that chief, that chain of command, all right, the chief as it goes up, it gets to DC. You're probably, if you don't have the permission, you're not going to be able to talk. And what's interesting about when I was with the Forest Service, they always would put a PAO, public information officer, attached to you. And there was times I was very lucky. I was trusted to say the right things, which is a huge honor. They trusted me. But I've watched other employees. They're like, no, we're going to attach a PAO to you. And then that person can't speak freely. The PAO is speaking for you. It's like, well, that's not right. So that's when that report came out. It was there was a lot of tech in there, which is great. But as true boots on the ground firefighters, that kind of tech doesn't put out fires. Fires is a chemical reaction. It's fuel, heat, and oxygen. That is it. Until little green men visit us from another planet and change our physics and our rules, that's something different. But right now it's fuel, heat, and oxygen. If you give me satellites and all this, I call it fluff, that doesn't put the fire out. I need to suffocate it, take the fuel away, or cool it down. Just like a human being or a chemical reaction. If I take food away from you, I make you cold, I suffocate you, you die. Period. So that's what I was trying to get to that PCAS team. And the meeting was over 90 minutes, right? I was doing something right. It wasn't 90 seconds. Usually when you get a meeting with a mayor or a governor or something, it's like 90 seconds, go. It's like, right? I can't even go to the bathroom in 90 seconds nowadays. So long story short, I was proud to be in the report, but it's like, no, that's not what I want. And it's not just me, but it's like, why are they not listening? And that's been my biggest challenge since I was in the agency, the Forest Service, till now I'm out of it and I can speak more freely. How do you get the right folks to listen? Because you have a lot of fire chiefs, a lot of high brass. Those are the folks that get consulted. And if I've come up with some simple terms, I say, look at their resume. Those folks making the decisions. If they're making wildland fire decisions and they've never been on a hand crew, helitat crew, wildland engine type 6 crew or type 1, smoke jumper, hot shot, how are they going to lead their folks for those kind of decisions? And that's what we've seen. I've done my own research. I own a research company, and you pick and you look under here, you look under there. It's like, well, that's the wrong person for that duel, for that job. So that is the biggest thing I've seen in the last few years. We have folks in the wrong position, making the wrong decisions and not getting the support.
That reminds me when I worked for Anaheim and we were kind of a wildland interface, the actual city, and then we had crews that went off and deployed. But I was a tillerman on a truck, so I was ultimately staying in the city. Just spending that time that I did, in the trainings that we had, the progressive hose lines, cutting line, which was a very, very short portion of it because, we're not probably going to be cutting line. You just see how it's a completely different skill set, understanding the weather and topography. That's a whole other job description. So I can't imagine being from the municipal side and being in charge of the wildland side. Just as a basal firefighter, you can see immediately the room for errors if you haven't actually been in those positions yourself.
Correct. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to become a smoke jumper, right? I mean, I started at the bottom as a volunteer, which was amazing. I still consider myself a rookie and a volunteer. Got to ride tailboard for basically a little over a year, almost 2 years, right? And move your way up. Now you can get to be the cab man. Had to, get the engineer not lost or the captain not lost to the fire. And then I moved on to rescue squad operator, and then I went to the feds. And you see those ranks, and it's like, whoa, those guys know how to fight fire. It's not just a shovel digging dirt, right? There's a science to that. And you don't get that till years and years later. I'm still learning, but I've spent a lot of time from ground zero, from piling sticks for fire prevention to control burns. So I've been stationed at all those little pieces. And again, you have high brass out there that we know they don't know what that means. They've never done it. So how do you give that to your battalion chiefs and your division chiefs and your captains, your engineers, your lieutenants? It's not going to work. And that's what's exactly happened. That's what's supposed to happen. It's not working.
Yeah.
Until you change that. And I remember one of the comments, I won't say who was, but they said, Mr. Ramos, we can't fire people. And I laughed a little bit. I said, I didn't say fire people. I said, re-educate them or remove them from their position and put them somewhere else. Put them where they're good at. It's like taking, again, Willy Wonka and say, Willy Wonka, we're going to come over here making pizza. He doesn't make pizza. Makes candy. So it's very interesting to still see this today, even the past of Santa Ana event that we had. I pull my hair. That's why I got shortcut hair, right? I'm not losing my hair. I just pull it out. And it's such a bummer that, being honored to be a smoke jumper for those many years in hell attack and able to jump out of aircrafts on very extreme fires and be able to put them out with our recipe. It works. And to do prescribed fires in areas with fire goats, that was probably one of my funnest times. That was in my off season. I got to work, multiple months working with fire goats. And fire goats, exactly how it sounds, you put them in an area for a couple weeks and they will eat everything in sight. They'll eat everything in sight. If you stand there long enough, you're going to be in your underwear. They're amazing. And I got to do hard work with, there were some days we had 200 head, 400 head. It's insane of what part of the tool. It's not the answer to everything, but if you stick fire goats in a Santa Ana corridor, which I call it, right, an area that the Santa Anas are going to be back, and you got chaparral, all these different types of 1 hour, 10-hour fuels, you start breaking those little pieces. No fuel, no fire. I'm not saying erase everything, but less fuel, less fire. It's a simple, Mother Nature's given us the tools. We're not using them.
It's amazing how when we have these modern day technological problems, more often than not, the answer is already there in history. So for example, look at us now. We're realizing, if you put chemicals and hormones and antibiotics in your food, it causes cancer. But if you don't do that and you grow it holistically and you move and you get sunshine and you ground, then you're a healthier person. And I remember seeing fire goats for the first time. I think it was Portugal was using them. So do you know the kind of origin story from the US of when that idea was brought here? Because to me, it just seems like a full circle to probably what they've done for millennia in human history.
I first experienced fire goats and grazing sheep, that kind of stuff. I was a teenager still, because I know it. I can actually tell you where I was standing, Harvest Way in Riverside County, looking at them running the fields. And that was, came a fire in 1989, so we're talking 86, 87. And his little trailer caught on fire. And it caught on fire, and guess what? It didn't go anywhere because the sheep and the goats ate everything around it. And years later, in my book, you see that fire, that was the same area the goats and the sheep didn't get to. It's like, right, and it's just a small piece of the solution. But if everyone tends to their backyard, right, and does what they need to do, you will have some fire-prone areas. I mean, it's so simple. And I told that to the president's team. I said, we could start right now, like 2 minutes from now. Is it going to be the full solution? No. Do you have to come up with more money and do this? Not really. It's already in place. We have fire prevention officers. We have all these things. So that was when my first experience being a teenager on a skateboard going, whoa, what are they doing? And then years later, right, almost, 15, whatever years later, or 10 years later, came home and see this, the area that we lived in, they hired this shepherd, this person that shepherded these goats to eat all the fuels. And I was a firefighter. I'm like, whoa. So I went and talked to him, met the owner, found out I was a smoke jumper. He says, hey, you want to work? I said, yeah. It was free. I said, you feed me, I'll work for you. And he fed me well. So I spent weeks, tending to some preemies a little bit, sick goats, giving them the shots. I mean, hard work. Some of the hardest work I've ever done. There is no breaks. There's no vacation. There's no, I'm sick. There's no, right? He says, Jason, I'd like to give you a couple head of goats you can run in yourself. You got your van already? You're like plug and play. I'm like, back at that time I was chasing waves, spearfishing, and that was my thing. It's like, I don't think I want to. It's like, can I take the goats to Mexico with me? It's like, no. Got to stay here. So that was my first experience. But that is part of a solution in some areas that are low impact, and the reward and the outcome in a couple weeks, there's nothing left. There's nothing left.
It's so clever and it's so simple. You touched on the fire. So, like I said, I worked Anaheim for a few years. The east side there was really our kind of, interface, and certainly a very dangerous place. If you look at the potential, and I mean, the whole place was just, brown, for months and months and months and months. Let's kind of unpack what you've seen as far as the events leading up to these fires, and then we can talk about the way they were fought and then the takeaways. But what have you analyzed so far as the contributing factors to it being such a deadly and destructive fire this time?
Sure, I'll break it down. There's only one gentleman recently I've heard in the years. He just did an interview on what is it called, California Insider. He's the past, I think, LA County sheriff. He knew his stuff. He stays in his lane. He's right. So what I'll get into is, I like to bring down analogies because most people just don't get it. So if you don't cut your lawn forever, it gets big. You don't weed your backyard, it gets big. If you don't weed your garden, it gets overgrown. If you plant your tree when you were in elementary, right, and now you're in college, it's gigantic, right? Right? You're hanging from it. It's the same thing with our fuel. So meaning our brush, our homes. Fuel can also mean homes. If we pile up a bunch of homes close to each other, that is a fuel issue. So if we don't mitigate and trim our lawns, cut our lawns, weed our gardens, trim your beard, get your hair cut, you're going to look like Bigfoot, right? Don't cut your hair for 20 years. Right? You're going to be stepping on your hair. It's the same thing with our brush. We have these, I call them Santa Ana corridors. I was telling you not too long ago, I can pull up a map. It's a program that we use for search and rescue and emergency responders use across the nation. It's called CalTopo. I can go pick an area, let's just say the Malibu area, and go back to the early 1900s. It'll give me all the archival fires from the 1900s in colors. And I can show this to a kid in a science class in a STEM program, and he'll probably say, Jason, looks like this area is a problem area. We need to fix that area. Like, this is going to happen again. Just imagine if you knew there was going to be a tsunami at some point at this same location, but you had warnings. You had 3 or 5 days warnings from the weather forecast. High pressure in the Great Basin, low pressure setting up, and we're probably going to possibly have 60 to 80 mile-an-hour winds. Days ahead of the time. But this could happen every 3, 5, 10 years, or every year, right? And we still do nothing. We do very little. I'm not saying nothing. Some departments do, but at the scale that we know, right? I started fighting fire in 1989 in Southern California. I watch fires get bigger and bigger in Santa Ana corridors. And as the brush grows, right, it gets bigger, trees get bigger, and we're still not maintaining it. So just think in another 5 years or 10 years, some of these areas that have not had fire in a while, you're going to have another extreme incident. And the thing is, we know in the fire service, depends on where you're at, right? In the government, every day we did a briefing. You had your daily weather, your outlook 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, you kind of pick, right? And then you had a meteorologist telling you what's going on. This is every day in the fire service. I could go to a different county, sit in as a guest, and it's clockwork. It's the same thing. And if you go back on January 6th and look in Google, just go Google January 6th, you'll see some of the headings in Google, catastrophic winds, hurricane winds, and then you click on it, and some of them have disappeared, right? Maybe due to lawsuits or whatnot, but like, we're getting warned. Why are we not acting? So that's the most interesting part that we can fix now, but it's sad to know that, a lot of people say, well, we didn't know it was going to happen. It's like, yes, you did. You probably knew about 5 days. Even the homeowners. This is not just the firefighters, right? We got to put accountability on, if you live in a Santa Ana corridor, which you want to live near the beach or live in this beautiful area, you need to trim your grass or trim your beard as well. You need to help the firefighters. When we got, right, I say we, still think I'm a firefighter, but I'm still a first responder. But if you have, right, hundreds of homes burning, sorry, immediately we don't have hundreds of fire engines. It's going to take a few days to get those resources, those type 1 resources. Type 1, always think type 1, the biggest and baddest. Type 1 helicopter, type 1 hand crew, that's the biggest and baddest. So it's something we can fix. And I always hate to say this, by Easter, we'll be off to the next big thing. Until Santa Ana's roll around next year, nothing might not happen next year, and then the next year. And then maybe in 5 years from now, maybe it'll be San Diego. It might be parts of Orange County. It might be parts of north of LA, right? And we're still, it's like, what are we doing? So hope that answered your question, but it drives me nuts.
It reminds me of COVID. We have this virus come through, and the middle of the road truth is that in almost all the cases, anomalies aside, it was really taking out people who already had pre-existing medical conditions. So the takeaway should have been, let's make Americans healthier. Let's, bolster local farms to grow organic food. Let's put real food in schools. Let's put PE programs back where they should have been. Let's do all these things to make our nation healthier. So when, as you said, whether it's a fire or a virus, when the next one happens, the amount of people affected is greatly reduced. But nothing happened after COVID. They just swept it under the rug and they were like, all right, well, let's move on. And I think it's such a disservice because there are lessons in this. If you analyze what happened in California, and like you said, there's all these levels. What do we miss at the forestry level? What do we miss at enforcing that homeowners are abating brush and trees on their perimeter? Are there any areas to address in the fire service response? What about the water supply? But if if it just seems to be from the outside that, like you said, it's insanity doing the same thing again, expecting different results.
Yes. And you nailed it, right? It's like, this is going to happen again. And it's interesting. People that are close to me that can go back in time. I have a business now, right? We keep notes. They can say, Jason, you called that one 2 years ago in that area. I said, yeah, I know, because it's a corridor. It will happen. I can't tell you when exactly, but when you have the winds, the low relative humidities, it's going to happen. And again, it's interesting to watch all these folks, some great, I would say leaders, right? They're doing something. They're in the arena, right? They're getting punched. They're out there trying to make a difference. One of my biggest pet peeves when I want to contact some of these guys, gentlemen and ladies, they make it so hard that you can't contact them. They make it 007. And it drives me absolutely nuts that I can't get a hold of someone. I got to get a hold of an agent. The agent doesn't answer his phone. You do an email. We don't live long enough. If we lived, right, 200 years, I'd be like, okay, I'll get him 50 years from now. So it's interesting and that's how my book came out. People ask, Jason, how do you get a hold of these CEOs and you become friends with them and you design this and you design a better helmet and all these? I said, I blow up the phone and I find them. I hunt them down at an expo and I stare at them, right? And I crush their hand, give them a good firm handshake. And that's how I get stuff done. And when I can't contact someone, it drives me crazy because they're on the same page. And if you have a team of folks, right, you can do more damage. Damage meaning good, right? Good damage. So that's what really bugged me in the president's report and all this stuff. It's like, give me the tools. And I said, prove me wrong. I said, you give me this power right now, I will go out. We'll pick a section. We have multiple sections in Washington State. We did these clearings. They're called Firewise. You drop timber. You bring in some goats. You do a little bit of hard work. You have chippers come in. They have volunteers that come in or they get paid. Like there's a solution to it all. But again, if you're not a connoisseur of that, you don't know the resources and it doesn't happen. So it's a bummer. It's a true bummer. That we have this learning experience, and I still haven't seen anything come out. The best thing I've seen come out for your listeners is go to the California Insider and look at one of the recent interviews there with the past sheriff. It was amazing. He talks about unified command. Not many people know what unified command is, and that's when I know someone knows what they're talking about. That means I'll go to Mission to Walmart with you. If you don't know what unified command is, I'm not going to Mission to Walmart or anywhere else with you, because you just I don't want to be stuck with you somewhere, because then I'm about to be saving your butt. And unified command is exactly how it sounds, unified. So everything from the dog catchers, the water districts, the utilities, the fire, the police, Willy Wonka, Walmart, I don't care, whoever's in that area, unified command.
Well, you need pizza. That's why Willie's there.
Yes, right? So, and that's when it works. I mean, I watched an old video, Riverside County. They were doing a demo on unified command. Listeners can Google this, and you can see how well it works when you know Fred and Diana from the water district, and you're like, hey, what's that reservoir look like? What do we got? And they're like, you're good. You're good. Awesome. I know Diana. I've known her for years, right? And then a certain amount of helicopters, and you see Fred over there from CAL FIRE or the Forest Service. And he's like, I got you covered, man. We got 3 Type 1s. We got a Type 1 team if you need. Awesome. Okay, we got a bunch of animals running the streets. Where's Tanya? I'm on it. We got animal control. But the other way, everyone's scrambling. Oh, we got animals. We got people looting. It's like, guys, it's all there already. It's like, didn't you take your leadership courses, your L courses, and your task force courses, and your division courses? It's like, how did you get that brass on your collars that you're aligning every day to go to work? How did you get that? Because you're supposed to know that. So that's where I get a little bit, I can still be your friend and give you hugs, but I have no, my mercy gets thin when you're wearing collar brass and you're not doing your job.
I've literally been calling that out, even just from the health of the fire service in the moment and the recruitment crisis. I mean, if you're not stepping up and advocating for the health of your people, but you're collecting a chief's salary, there's something wrong with that.
Correct. Yeah, and that was, one thing I loved at being Hell Attack and being a jumper and even SAR is you got a PT. I don't care if you got to bust out 20 push-ups in the bathroom, some chair push-ups, do some squats on the toilet seat. I don't care. Do something, right? Do some paces, do a couple lunges, right? It's like, you got to be in shape right? We're all going to get old at some point, right? There's guys still in their 80s that can do some push-ups. I've seen it. Experience is like, wow, that guy's in better shape than me right now. So, right, it's that $1 trillion, $1 million question. It's like, how do we motivate people when things bad go happen and we have the answers to fix it? But most people don't want to fix it.
Yeah.
But it affects the people that want to. So,
yeah, I hate it when people say we don't have the answers. I heard that recently. And it's like, but I know the answers, and I'm by far not an SME. I've never rose above the rank of firefighter. So I've always flipped it around. Well,
if I can find the answers as a dumbass firefighter, why the fuck haven't you already? Whether it's a union or whether it's
Yes.
chiefs or whatever. When we've talked in the past, and then Ben Strawn and Rex and some of these other wildland brothers that I've had on the show, there seems to be a reoccurring theme. The resistance to prescribe burns from communities also seems to hamper the suppression of some of these fires. Is this still an issue now?
It is. So, right, it's all about the education. This is the first time we had a good talk on that PCAST meeting. You got folks, right, whether they got some lung issues or smoke, right, irritants. I get it. But we have companies like now called BurnBot. They got a burn chamber for 1 hour fuels. They can come in and burn all year round in places that have 1 hour fuels. 1 hour fuels is a 1/4 inch and under, right? Light fuels, twigs, grass. The latter fuels that start the big fires, right? Get into the bigger 10-hour fuels, which is brush and so on, and then timber, 100-hour fuels and so on. The BurnBot comes in. They have mastication tools. They got robotics. They can come in, a small crew. They don't need hotshot crews. They don't need hand crews. They come in themselves, and they can do a lot of, fuel mitigation in a very short amount of time. I've been following them for years. I have briefed everyone on them. They work, like they're operational. People can Google them. Listeners, go look at BurnBot. Watch one of the PhDs. I believe his name is Phil. I should know this by heart. I'm embarrassed. I don't know his first name. But he talks about the burn chamber. Phil, I'm sorry if your name's not Phil. Sorry.
It is now.
Yeah, right. So it's amazing to see them grow from their prototype. We had a fire summit here in San Bernardino a couple years ago, and in less than a year, they were operational. And I remember when I hand-selected some of the best fire folks in the Southern California area. Actually, one guy that trained me when I was 17. He didn't recognize me, but I told him, it's your fault why you're here. And a lot of my buddies were coming over and asking me, say, Jason, is this real? This looks like a Red Ryder wagon with a fan. And is this just another concept, crazy idea? I said, nope. And then less than a year, they did a video on YouTube with, they had a contract with the Forest Service for multiple, large acres. And they're like, they're operational. I said, yeah, of course they are. You think I'm gonna invite someone that's right, just complete concept? So there's that tool. That's just part of the solution, right? So you have a place that's very sensitive on smoke. The BurnBot would come in there if it meets the parameters of that light fuels. Let's say it doesn't. Let's say, hey, we can't. The fuels are too big for the BurnBot. Okay, we'll bring in some of the masticators. The masticators will come in and chew up all that 10-hour fuels, whatnot, and leave it looks like a dozer. I remember I had a picture. My buddy was out doing some of the work, and I said, did you have you had a cat? He's like, no. It was the little masticator, down to dirt. So there is solutions right now, and what they're trying to do, I know in the past, they were trying to treat 1 million acres a year, which is a huge number. I know the owners, the PhDs, the folks there, they do not say something that they have not done the homework. And I've watched them succeed and execute. And that's what's good about them. They execute, they're doing it, they're kicking butt, but they're just one small piece. If I had my Willy Wonka machine and let's just say I made 1,000 of them, you wouldn't have Santa Ana issues anymore because all those corridors would be treated for the brush side.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't fix the home side until we get sprinkler kits and mitigate the homes. But the fuel side of the brush would be mitigated with that type of work, mastication, fire goats, hand power. So,
well, what seems to be weird as well is if you think about it, a little discomfort. And again, I lived in California for a few years. Burbank was burning several times when I lived there, and that wasn't a prescribed burn. But a few days of inconvenience is nothing compared to your entire neighborhood being razed to the ground just before the insurance companies have pulled the plug on any coverage for you. So even, like you're talking about the goats and the masticators and the BurnBots sound amazing, but even just putting your foot down as whether it's the Forest Service, whichever just jurisdiction that is, and saying, look, a little discomfort versus losing your home, that there's no conversation here. Like, we have to do this. Otherwise, it will be so dangerous. We might lose the city of paradise, for example. So that's where I feel like, again, you're talking about earning your position. You just have to be courageous and say, look, I get it. Ideally, you'd have clear air every single day, but this is the price of doing business. You chose to live in this part of the state. We have to mitigate this fuel, or you may lose your home.
Correct. And as my old command officer used to say, a little bit of smoke now or a lot later.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some French in there, a little bit of effing smoke now or a lot later. And it's absolutely right. So let's just take LA County, right? That's a Santa Ana corridor. Orange County is a Santa Ana corridor. Some of that's not Fed land, but you can collaborate, right? Bring the professionals in. But now you don't even need to do that. You can contact folks like BurnBot. You can contact some of these fire goats. You can contact some of the CCC that come in and chip and Firewise. You don't even need to contact the fire service. That's the most interesting part, which no one's tapping into. Like the chief of LA, right? I'll say it, the chief of LA County. I don't know her. I would love to see her background. She should be more prepared. You live in that area. I don't care if you're, right, LAC, whether you want to be a structural firefighter, right, you better have some wildland boots. You better be trained in cutting line for hours. Not that you're going to do it because you're assigned to maybe a truck, but if you live in that area, those citizens are relying on you to protect them at those high standards. And not saying those firefighters don't. I have friends there, I've trained some, they work in that department. But the bummer part at the high brass, why are they not doing more? That is the question. There's stuff I can't see. But if I was, let's just say me and you, right? You're the chief, I'm your division, I'm your assistant chief. I'm going to say, James, here's our corridor. We have acres of high threat 1 hour fuels into 10-hour fuels into 100-hour fuels. We've already mapped it out for you. We can start treating some of these near the road, because most of these fires start from human beings by accident or by purpose, right? You have cigarettes, you have barbecues, weed eaters, someone trying to use a warming fire, arsonists. Treat that first, right? That's doable. I could do that, and then I'd give you my plan, and you'd say, go for it.
Don't go for it. Do you know who I am? I'm the chief. How dare you talk to me like that?
Right? Exactly,
that's what could also
right?
happen in a fragile ego environment. Not saying that's LA County, but I know personally there are people that if you're not their rank or above, they don't want to hear what you have to say.
Correct. And it has to, let me back up a little bit. So you'd have to be a pro chief. You'd say to me, Ramos, I want you to go out and do this for me and come back with me, and we're going to make this happen. If I went out, did it my own, and briefed you, I'm probably going to get some reprimand some way, somehow, right? Because you're not going to like it. And we've learned that in the fire service, right? Chain of command, all these things. And it's like, wait a second. We took an oath, life and property, period. There's nothing else. But we only kind of do that? Right? It doesn't make sense to me. And again, no one can take that away from me. I got over 33 years. I did 20 years active jumping out of helicopters and planes. Can't take that away from me. You can't take my quals away from me. You don't have to like me, right? You can't take that away from me. And I've done some pretty cool things. Can't take it away from me. So I have something to say about that, right? So when I'm on a mission and it's like, hey, let's do this. And I've been lucky to be chaperoned and put under the wing of some of the best out there, even in the jump program, to learn how to, when I jump a lightning fire, that fire's out when I leave it. It's 110% out. And if it isn't, I'm going to probably lose my job because I failed. And now I just started a huge forest fire that burned homes, could possibly kill someone. I take that very important. Imagine now if I was a chief. I wish I can give that shot of, of responsibility to fire chiefs around the nation, because some are great and some are lacking. And the good part is you can fix yourself. Go in the bathroom, throw some water in your face, run in the door a couple of times, kick yourself in the nuts. I don't care what you do. Like, you can change it. That's the good part about it. Like, you could go out there and say, I'm the chief. Things are going to change. And yes, some people are going to get pissed off. I don't care. I got these things on my brass here. Come try to take them off of me, right? You want to duke it out a little bit? That's okay. Let's get some Nerf bats. Let's beat each other, We'll go take the Nerf bats. We'll go in the back room and beat ourselves together, right? Or we'll play the old boxing game, right? We'll do the thumbs or whatnot. So, yeah, it's very interesting. And I've had my run-ins with chiefs and captains, and I respect them. I apologize when I have to, right? I will say, I'm sorry, sir, for being in line, but this is life and property. And this is why I did that. This is why I disobeyed a direct order when you told me to cancel your response and drive back. But when I'm driving by my firefighter and he's screaming for help, why I got on the radio and told dispatch, Squad 68 available on scene. Get out, help my firefighter, because he's screaming for help, and then go back to the station, and the captain wants to write me up.
Mm-hmm.
Write me up all day long, sir. I'm sorry for helping my firefighter that was screaming for help. I am sorry. How many push-ups do I have to do? I will clean the bathrooms. I am sorry. Right? I didn't get written up. So those are the kind of things, and it's such a fixable thing.
Absolutely.
Sorry for the rant.
No. You're in similar company. Well, you touched on reservoirs, so let's hit that. Obviously, there's one side of the conversation that's glaring, which if enough houses are burning and enough engines on scene, a water supply is going to be extremely challenged. That can happen in a city setting as well. I remember going on one massive fire that was like, I think it was an entire block, if I remember rightly, in Fullerton years ago. And I know the supply was a challenge for that particular fire. What have you heard as far as, again, Monday morning quarterbacking? What needs to change so that we can increase the likelihood of the firefighters having water when they need it?
So I've heard a lot, right? And I own a research company. Again, you won't hear me say I think a lot. I use the word I think when if I'm with you. I say, hey man, James, I think I have room for more pizza, or I can eat that last piece of cake. I think I can do that. Because you got to remember, when I say think, everyone's at 50%. Like, I think that'll work. I think we'll be okay. So I've heard a lot of thinks. If you're, again, I'm going to go back to this. If you are a chief or the commander in charge, commander in chief of a department in a Santa Ana corridor, all your pre-plans, you better have water. I want every battalion, every station. I remember checking fire stations when I was 17 years old because they would stick toys in them. That's what one of the jobs we did is, hey, we had to go check this fire hydrant to see if they stuck toys in there. In your pre-plans, you're supposed to be doing all these things. If I was a chief in an area in a Santa Ana corridor and had a dry reservoir, something's wrong. And if you want to fix it, don't fix it during Santa Ana months. Let's fix it when the Santa Anas are gone, maybe from April to May, June. That's a time to work on that thing. Not during a Santa Ana. Santa Ana's come as a kid, riding a skateboard and flying power kites, right? We knew every year, September, January, somewhere in there, sometimes a little bit in February, was the best kite flying, right? To see Wizard of Oz stuff, trees falling over, and storms and sandstorms. As a kid, you were like, yeah, storm, right? Not fires, but sandstorms and stuff. So why were those, that's my question, right? If I was on a president's team, that would say that can't happen. And why did that happen? Tell me why. If you go back in time and they had a Type 1 team that came in there to support them for this possible win event, somewhere in that team operations, most likely, they're going to be looking at the area. One of those ops guys are going to say, or she, how many reservoirs you got and what's your water supply? Days out before. This is not rocket science. right? This is standard ops. So that puzzles me, right? We have some people on YouTube flying days before they backlogged some stuff and showed the reservoirs dry. It's like, well, that's definitely not good. If it was full, would they would have been able to stop the whole thing? No, but they would have been able to probably do more, right? If you don't have water, now what are you going to use? So there's some serious problems there. Not only that, in these corridors, you can have dip sites. Dip sites, or what I did as a helitack, you could have areas with 2,500 gallon dip tanks or even more, pre-positioned out in areas. We call it typical terrain, right? I would say forest, but some of it might be county land. They're sitting out there ready. So helicopters can come and grab, engines can come and take. They're all centrally located. So that is a huge problem. Another big problem is their egress and ingress, right? Pre-plans. When I was 17, being in a fire department, that our battalion knew all the citizens that we protected, right? When it had a storm, you couldn't go down that road. You'd get stuck. We made sure they knew, like, that was part of the fire department to tell people, hey, if there's a fire here, floods, this is how you get out, right? People would come to the fire station, the bays would be open, they would ask us questions, we'd educate them. So back to the water there, that just blows my mind. I can't even, I'm not going to sit there and quarterback, sit here from a seat and say, this, and this. But if you live in a corridor, you should be ready. So all those people listening right now, if you're in a corridor, Orange County, San Diego, Malibu area, Laguna, remember, fuel, heat, and oxygen is the fire triangle. If you don't have something to break that triangle, that's what's supposed to happen. It's going to burn until it can't burn anymore.
Were there sprinkler systems? Because obviously there was quite a lot of money in some of these neighborhoods that were raised. Were there sprinkler systems set up there that didn't have the capacity to turn on again because of the water shortage?
So I know for a fact there was some, through companies I know had some of the clients, their homes. Again, this is hard to say, right? They say, oh, my home was saved. And then I see pictures like, no, it could have been saved without the sprinklers on, right? So it depends. If, again, imagine the amount of fires, and you hear this on the news, right? If we all turn on our hose at one time, you're going to have drops coming out of it. So these areas, right, like right now, the counties that didn't get burned, that live in Santa Ana quarters, they should be going out doing mock scenarios. I want every battalion to turn on a hydrant at this time for so many minutes. Like right now, they can be doing something. I want all the homeowners to turn on their sprinklers at this time, right? I'm sure there's going to be some environmental, oh no, we can't do that. We can't. How are you going to fix the problem if you can't see what the issues is? So there was some homes. There was an interview of an older gentleman that did save his home. He stayed, and around his homes were burned and his were saved. And you got to remember, some of these homes, depending on the direct flame impingement and the wind and the relative humidities of that area, some can be really saved and some cannot, right? If we have 40-mile winds and the flames are horizontal, blowing against a home, at some point that's going to catch fire. But the gentleman was interesting with his old hose. He dragged it around and was putting out little spot fires. And there was a reporter that kind of went viral. He was, it's the one where all the embers, he's out there in the battle and he's getting all these praise. He definitely, if I knew him, he would not get a Christmas present from me, because he's filming one little fire. It's a spot fire. He says, I can't do anything. And he runs somewhere else. I can put that out with my foot. And that area was going to start that house possibly on fire. It's like you can pee on that. So it's this education. But if every homeowner in those areas were educated on basic sprinkler kits or wetting agents that they can apply with a spray paint gun, whether they rent one or own one already, or an ACE sprayer that stays on the home, it's non-caustic, non-hazardous, that works too. Like, it works. There's been testing. It's proven solution. Cal Fire has tested that. You can watch on YouTube of homes treated with fire resistant or wetting agents and ones without. So
What about shelter in place? I think it was Rex Strickland that talked about this. If you look at what happened in the Paradise Fire, I had Beth Bowersox, who was a dispatcher from that fire. So really, heartbreaking, unique perspective that she had. And her home was destroyed in that whole thing, but she was a Paradise resident, so all her neighbors were dying on the end of the phone. And it was actually a building that was on a concrete pad that saved a lot of people that were being led by one of the police officers, and they all survived. There was like a school bus full of kids and teachers that were in there. And so Rex's concept was actually communities having, a specific shelter in place. Like in Florida here with hurricanes, a lot of the high schools become the shelter for people. What's your perspective on that? I mean, we know how narrow these lanes are, and we saw how they got jammed up immediately. In high-rise fires, for example, we use that as long as it's, obviously not a 9/11 or Grenfell situation. So talk to me about that concept.
correct, and I love it. And I'm always an advocate for these small communities to have their own fire departments, their own police departments, their own, right? If you have able of fighting age, I call it, right? You could have a block that could be your task force, right? Those folks can shelter in place and take care of everything. They got the right fire hose, garden hose that's professionally used. They can have wetting agents. If there's no water, they can still treat without water. They can take care of the elderly, right? The ones that can't. It can be done. It's been done. Have the egress to know when to leave. It's like, hey, folks, here's our pre-plans. Like, I have it up where I live. If we can't go here, we go there. And it's communities can do that because the fire departments and the police departments, when they're that task saturated on that large of an event, there's only so much they can do. So that shelter in place and holding your own ground, if you're trained and have the tools, you can do it. And then you have that fallback, right? It's okay, guys, we did what we did. Now we have to leave, but we know which way to go, right? You have some simple stuff, apps on your phone, cameras, wetting agents, and it's not that difficult. I've done this multiple times with friends, their communities, their neighborhoods, their quarter sacks, their areas. They do it. And then when fires happen or emergencies, they're rocking and rolling. Like, it works. The hard part is who to teach them, right? You go on some of these government sites, it's not there. So I concur with that, how do you say, that mode of tactics. I know many communities that know me, become friends with me, they do that. They know where their ins and outs. They have mitigated the fuel. They know their neighbors' medications. They know what vehicles they have. They're like, hey, I got a Sprinter fan. I can fit 8 people. And they're like, hey, yeah, I got my swimming pool. And I also have 2 55-gallon drums of water in the back for earthquake. Right? So everyone's like, oh, yeah, and I got 100 cans of peaches, right? And asparagus in cans. I mean, it can be done. It is being done in some communities. Some of Colorado, I did some stuff. My book came out. There were some of the most progressive fire prep emergency because they were near dams. They had wildfire issues. And the whole community, everyone was like their own fire department, police department. Not going and grabbing robbers, but if they seen something bad, they helped out. I hope that answered that question.
Yeah, no, and I think it really alludes to something that we need to refine in this country, which is community. I think it's all within us, don't get me wrong, but with the division that we've seen, certainly over the last 4+ years, with COVID and beyond, that's an enemy to responding to these disasters, whether it's the poor people in North Carolina, whether it's the fire affected towns and areas in California. If you've pre-planned and you're communicating with your community and you're watching over each other, and now with this technology today, you've got apps, like you said, to see, okay, Mrs. Jones has just hit the emergency button on the app. Let's go get her. that now you've just amplified the response. It's like the Green Berets. The Green Berets don't go and kick indoors, even when they can. They go train a militia, and then the militia go kick indoors, maybe with one of the Green Berets kind of overseeing it. And it's the same thing with this. I think, whatever our target hazards are, whether you're in, in the tornado corridors or the hurricanes here, like having that communication with the community and having that preparedness, so that when it happens, you're not all just running around like with your heads cut off, and now you're screaming for first responders. After maybe you voted against them getting pay raises and more staffing, and it's too late then. Whereas if you do it before, maybe then that would help integrate in the first responder community, and people would learn a lot more about what we do, how prepared we are, and what we need to be even more prepared. So I think it's a great idea to really kind of spearhead that community response element, so that now if it happens, they've already got a plan as well. They're working alongside us.
Correct. And here's the most interesting part of that too. So every fire station has a prevention, right? Whether it's a small department back somewhere that he's the chief, the captain, the engineer, the prevention, right, the mayor, right? Or you have a department that has that. So all the listeners, they can go to their fire station right now and say, can you come to our neighborhood and show us, teach us, right? And if that prevention's not doing it, give me a call. Give me a call. I'll make a call and we'll make it happen. So it's, we have communities that they say, we love our country, or we love our neighborhoods, we love our brothers, we love our sisters. It's like, okay, take that to the next level, right? I mean, arm yourself, not arm yourself physically, right, with the education, the power. If you have fires in your areas, be on the lookout. Warn your next door neighbor to say, hey, today's probably not the best day to cook those hamburgers because the RH is at 2, and if you fart, you might make a fire, Tom, right? It's like, why are we not doing that? You can come up with cool shirts. You could be your own little fire brigade. It's totally doable. Like, there's no law says you cannot do it. I'm not telling people to go out and do all this crazy stuff. We're saying basic, right? We watch our kids come home. We protect them. We watch our dogs. Do the same thing with your home. Protect your home. You can't do that. Like, a lot of people say, just let it burn. The insurance will take care of it. It's like,
not anymore. It won't. They're pulling the plug.
Yeah, that's not the answer. Take care of your property. You do everything else. You're out there trimming your roses, and your lawn's perfect, and your backyard's perfect. Or let's say it's not perfect. It can be perfect, right? You can go up there and learn these things. So there's no excuse to not know how to do that in your neighborhood. Like, there's no excuse. And I wish the Santa Ana corridors, I wish it was almost, you can't make it mandatory, but right, I wish it was where if you wanted to live in these areas, you had, right, your task force neighborhood number 5, right? You can have your own little captain chief there, and right, you can have little fire engines, little sirens, or whatever. I don't care. But be ready when the fire comes, and you can help out, right? We have media guys going there getting their likes, right? They're in the battle and they're filming, which is great. It's like, how about you guys maybe help out a little bit, still get the footage. It can be awesome. It could be better footage. If you put that fire out, you'd have had more likes, right? But instead you said, I can't do anything. So it's, don't get me started on that. But anyways, it can be done. And I've been trying to do that since my book came out. And we've had some communities doing it. They have their own, they got their own, some people buy their own, an old fire engine, an old slip-on, called the slip-on. They put it on their trucks, got 100 gallons, 150 gallons. They have wetting agents. They have pumps that they put in the creek that all the neighbors can come and use the fire kit if they need to. Like, how cool is that? And then when the Forest Service comes in, it's like, oh man, that whole section up there, they're good. They can move on to a next section because they're taking care of their own land.
What you said about the journalists reminds me, and it was funny, I was in Anaheim when I saw this in Station 6 in their kitchen. Geraldo, I'll never forget this, middle of Katrina, he's there under this, this overpass, and he's like, "There, I was here 3 days ago, and the same families are here." And I just remember looking at him going, "Well, then why the fuck didn't you take him with you?"
Right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is exactly what you were just saying. You went there, filmed these people, and then you fucking left, and then you had the audacity to come back and say,
And say
"Why
they're
haven't
still
these
here.
people been rescued?" That is the fucking problem right there.
Yeah, it is. My dad's gone now, but he'd have some comment to like, he would say, "Son, pull your head out of your ass," right? It's like, I just couldn't believe it when I see stuff like that, and you're like, make a difference. Like, I don't care if you're a journalist. I don't care if you're this. Do something. You see an elderly person on the floor hurt? When do you want to pass up an opportunity to be Superman or Batman or Spider-Man? Again, some people are not able to, but you can help. You can help. Not everyone's tuned that way, but everyone growing up in the kid, right? Think back when everyone was your kid, right? Everyone's a superhero, right? I don't remember that many kids saying, "I don't want to be a superhero." So all of us, at least all the people around my circle, it's like, "Oh yeah, man, like this guy was this guy." We all started that within us. Why are we not doing it? It doesn't matter how old you get. Make a difference. So it's sad to see the fire, to see the mayor speak, to see the chief across the table. Right? When you have your core people, you're the mayor, you have your high brass next to you, within touching distance. You help me with the question, I help you. I have my team with me. My team is not sitting over there across the table, looking down at their knees or looking at the ground. I can tell right now you guys are screwed up. I don't want to go to a mission with you. But the good thing, again, you can fix it. Of course it's going to cause some waves. Of course you're going to be hit. When you wear those collar brass, I'm sorry, you're getting paid to get hit. You're getting paid to get kicked. You're getting paid to all these things. And if you don't like it, as my old supervisor says, McDonald's would love to have you. McDonald's is always looking for the best of the best, right? I've met some great McDonald's folks that have worked there, and now they're doing great things. They took pride in to give you the best fries, right? Not the healthiest, right? Or to make your milkshake or your McNuggets, whatever it may be, right? We've lost this piece. And again, the answer that it can be fixed, but we've lost some mentors, right? I mean, it's like, bring back Superman, bring back Spider-Man, bring back the Fonz, right? Things that were mentors that had good values, and they did something. And we're getting some of those. The Sean Ryan show, the work that you do, right? It's amazing. It's like, where are these folks? Stand up, right? Shine that sword. Shine your tennis shoes. I mean, be any superhero that you want, right? Seattle used to have a superhero. I can't remember his name. It'll come to me. He used to walk the streets of Seattle and look for crime. I talked to him, right, more than once. And the guy was a little bit right, but he was out there protecting people. And he wore a mask. It's like, awesome, man. So, yeah, we can go on for hours about that.
Well, I want to hit one more area, then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
When I think it was literally this morning or last night. It's funny because we were just about to have this conversation. I saw an article and then I Googled it, and this was actually a real thing, that from the Trump administration, there was a directive that any mention of climate change had to be removed from, I think it was the USDA and the Forest Service. Every single person, and correct me if I'm wrong, you included, that I know that's actually boots on the ground, wildland firefighter, has said climate change has made a difference. These fires are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, my perspective on this, having lived in California, for example, is we can see how polluted our airs, our oceans are anyway. So it's not even a question. We are damaging the planet with the way that we do business, with the pollution and all that stuff. With perfect example, when COVID happened, look at the change. So there's a clear difference between business as usual and when we actually take our emissions seriously. So with that all being said, obviously that's my perspective, but this directive was handed down. What is your perception of climate change and these fires? Because, if the wildland community seems to think this is an issue, that's another reason why we should be looking for alternative ways of reducing, all the contributing factors so that we can mitigate all these kind of symptoms that we're seeing, including obviously making it far more dangerous for our firefighters.
Correct. So in my book, a good chapter, let's see here, I should know this by heart, chapter 17, 18, possibly 16, or even before, we talk about a lot of things, right? The planet Earth is a dynamic thing, right? We've had ice ages, we've had this, we've had that. Have we added some horrible things to it? Yes. Does that change? Yes. You can't argue that part. And I've learned as I've done briefings at state capitals and all these things, and governors and president's team, everyone has their own definition of something. I like to be calibrated to mean red is red, it's not blue, black is black, white is white, pink is pink, where some folks will say red is, no, it's kind of yellow. No, it's red. And I understand what some of these folks say, hey, we're freaking people out about climate change and that. Of course it's changing. Have we added horrible smog and all these things, right, or from our plastics and all these? Yeah, we've made a difference. Some of it's not good. We know that. Like 2 + 2 is 4, right? I had a PhD say, well, Jason, not if we're talking quantum physics. And I said, okay, you're beyond me now.
You're missing the point.
let's just stick on Spock. 2 + 2 is 4, no matter what galaxy you're at. So, yes, there's an issue there. The issue on the fire stuff, and I had this with my book. I was teeth to teeth fighting with my author and all my team, and it's like the problem still is our fuel. The climate change could make my 1 hour fuels with the rain and the seeds that came in grow faster. Right? I grow too. I'm a farmer. I can grow. People say you can't transplant carrots. I can transplant carrots, and I've done it. I do microgreens, so I know how things grow. I know the effects of RHs, water, when you starve something, how it reacts, how it becomes more flammable and fuel moistures. I have all the gear I've designed with Kestrel. I have a weather meter, right? All these things. It's like, no, there is a difference there. So climate change depends on who you're talking to. But yes, there's something happening. It's always happening. But is it happening worse? We're adding some things that are not good. And we won't know. But why keep adding some bad stuff that's going to make it worse, right? And the sad part is, right, when you do some of the research, folks that live near certain parts of the country, the waters, right, and the melt off and all these things, it's happening. Do we know if it's exactly this or that? Someone might come out and say, hey, no, it was actually the Willy Wonka movie because everyone made gobstoppers or, jawbreakers, and that sugar actually caused this, and that's why you had all the fires. I mean, I'm joking, but right? You have all these PhDs and you listen to all these very smart people, and you can't argue. So I'm out of the Forest Service now, so I would kind of argue some of that because things are changing, right? I lived in Southern California, and the amount of smog back then to some of the stuff now, that's from us. Yep. Right? That's not bears farting and coyotes farting and deer farting. We're putting that air. You're trying to tell me that doesn't do something? It does something to my lungs, because my lung capacity is not the same anymore. Mm. Right? And I was a kid, I had problems. I had to take, so I hope that didn't confuse the listeners or answer your question, but to say something's not changing, if you want to call it a different word, let's call it a different word, but something's happening.
Yeah, I think this is the thing: is you want to identify all of the contributing factors, and if you just kind of brush one under the carpet, like I said, the obesity epidemic, brushed under the carpet during COVID,
Yep.
still a massive problem. Is it the only reason with COVID? No. But is it a massive thing that needs to be addressed? Yeah. Sleep deprivation in
Yes.
firefighters, massive. No one wants to talk about it. Everyone's, oh, we can't do that. Then, we don't have the money, all this shit. And our firefighters are dying and we have a national recruitment crisis. So by suppressing one of these elements, you're basically saying, I actually don't want to fix the problem. Now, like you said, is that everything? No. But if we can figure out, just public transport, some of these other things, that it's not about, every car being electric. It's like, why? If I saw a great video a while ago and they had dramatized what a street would look like without the car. So you had people and they were walking and stopping in front of red lights and then walking to the, you know what I mean? And you realize how much space a single car takes. You look at the freaking vehicles people drive these days for their, them and their one child or whatever it is. And it looks like a fucking school bus. So there are ways of still having the same quality of life, but, much better public transport or, the hybrid vehicles, whatever it is, we can make a better, impact on this. And I get it as well. India, China, there are other countries that have to buy into this too. But by suppressing the conversation, we fix nothing. So,
Correct. And yeah, it sucks, man. And like I said, if you want to change a name, but I watch so many documentaries. I love education. Every night before going to bed, I watch an educational piece. I watch some funny stuff. Every single night, I fall asleep to something, whether it's a PhD, a professor at a university. Some I fall asleep and don't want to listen to again. Some I'm like, wow, this person is, some of the folks Sean Ryan's been interviewing are crazy. Crazy good. And the stuff you're interviewing, it's like, wow, right? How cool to have a phone book of all those people I can call or you could call. Instead of I got to go to an agent or I got to get a hold of the CAA guy to talk to Fred, to Diana, to give him a call, to text him so I can call him or her. It's like, come on, share your mojo. Share it all. Share it all. So I agree with you on the climate change. It's a crazy. Again, it's always changing, but again, we're not making the problem better. Put it that way. We're not making it better. If people want to argue about that, it's okay. Forget climate change, all that. We're not making it better. See all that brown stuff over there supposed to be clear, and it looks nasty? That's from us, right? Let's fix it. So yeah, that's a crazy topic, and I've been, right, especially working for the Forest Service and hearing all these things and seeing on it and being an employee, right? It's like, no, something's happening.
Yeah,
it's not funny. I'm laughing not laughing at it. I'm laughing that it's real.
absolutely. All right. Well, then you mentioned the book. Your book is Smoke Jumper. Where can people find that? And then also, where can they reach out to you or learn more about some of the innovative projects that you're a part of?
So Amazon's a good place. Audible's great. The voice who played me, it's dating how old I am, was Ned Vaughn. He was in the movie for Hunt for the Red October. So he was one of the sound techs listening for Sean Connery's Submarine. So it was pretty cool to have him. I got to pick him. I liked his voice, and he was an ex-windsurfer kind of thing. So Amazon or smokejumperbook.com, you can just Google it and you'll find it. I am easy to get a hold of, right? You get on there, you'll find my number. If you crank call me, I'll crank call you back. I love it when people call me and say, Mr. Ramos, your taxes, you're going to get arrested. You got to pay us money now. I said, really? Tell you what, come on over. I'll give you a check right now. So again, that's my comedy. Some days I pick up these calls and the spam calls. It's a bummer now because there are more robots now. I liked it when there were real people, the spam calls. So again, my number's out there. You can read my book. I work with a lot of companies out there. I've designed some better fire gear for firefighters. That's a passion of mine. No, I don't get a lot of money for this stuff, right? I'm not a millionaire. I still work. I'm retired, but I'm not retired from work. I still work my butt off. Some of the stuff I get pennies for. Some of the stuff I don't get money for. Some of the stuff I've designed, I never had a contract. I never had anything. And they're still on the shelf, and it's like, and my advisors or lawyers say, Jason, you can't do that anymore. I said, well, I'm the owner. I can do what I want. I'm like, well, yeah, but. So yeah, smokejumperbook.com, Amazon. And I tell folks, just hear me out. You don't have to believe everything I say, but I, hope you enjoy the book. It's for all first responders. It's not just about smoke jumping. I started off as a volunteer. My heart is still as a volunteer firefighter. So it's for everyone, for the wives. And it's pretty cool in the years past to have husbands and wives come over and say, thank you, Jason. Now I know what my husband does because he doesn't talk about it. Right? And some do talk about it. So that was pretty cool. The guys whisper in my ear, Jason, good book, because they don't want to hear someone else, right, hearing that he's giving me, a thumbs up. And you find out who your friends are when I wrote the book. My commanding officer stood by my side, and just a few more. Everyone else, they're not my bros, right? That's one thing I hate, oh, you're my bro. It's like, yeah. Right? I don't do high fives. I do low fives. So, yeah. And I hope people read the book, and please share it. And you can make a difference. You can design something if you have an idea. I've designed multiple things with some of the biggest companies on planet Earth. I've helped do it. You don't need a degree in engineering or a PhD. I got 3 degrees, but they're just in passion. So it's a little riddle if anyone could figure that out. But I got 3 degrees. So I got to do a TEDx talk, right, live in New York, which I bit quite a bit off on that one. But hard to do verbatim with no teleprompter in front of a live audience. And if you screw up, you don't get to be on YouTube. So it's like a little bit of pressure, right?
A little bit. Well, I want to thank you so much. The people listening, if you haven't listened to episode 219, we lead you through your career. So another great conversation. But this was just so pertinent. I'm going to push this out, almost straight away, because I think now, as these fires are dying down, as the media is packing up and getting ready to cover some other disaster, this is the perfect time to address some of these issues and to address the first responder health. These firefighters that were hailed as heroes, let's actually get them a working environment that's healthy. So I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time again and coming back onto the Behind the Shield podcast.
Thank you so much, James. It's been great to have you, in my circle. You're a friend. You've always answered the phone with me. You're great to talk to. You have compassion. You listen. And it's just, right, if I can just clone folks like you, all the people would be, not even clone that, we can make folks, right, get mentors. All the listeners out there, that's how I started. You'll hear it in the first episode. I call people, I meet people, and they become my mentors. They're friends of mine to today. Some of the biggest CEOs now are my mentors. And they're friends. It's like, how cool is that? So thank you. It was an honor.